If you like this video, why not subscribe?
How shall I make out the report on him, Captain?
Better make it dead on arrival.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Frugal Filmmaker Q&A. That's the show where you send me your questions and I try to answer them here. If you'd like to have a question read on the show, please send it to thefrugalfilmmaker@gmail.com. That's your best chance of getting it read on the show. Or you can comment below and I'll try and pick it up from there. Hopefully I can answer you in both places, but if not, here it is on this show. If you haven't seen my last video, I uploaded it last week. It was all about the Perfect Storm lightning simulator. Essentially, it's this box you plug up to 1,000 watts worth of lights into, and it gives you kind of a lightning effect. It's pretty cool. I'm going to do a DIY version either this week or next week, so if you want to see what the retail version is like, check out my last video. Our first email comes from Donald Wren, who says, I just saw your latest video and a question was why use an outside audio source like the Zoom H1? Well, you showed just using the camcorder, so my question is, what about going mic directly into the camcorder? Also, can you show us the settings that you used on the Zoom? I'm having a hard time getting a good level sound. And I apologize, last time this question was brought up, and I really believe it was from Donald. He asked, why I was using an external audio recorder instead of going directly into the camera. And I interpreted that as meaning why wasn't I just using the on-camera mics? And so I did a demonstration. I can do another one quickly right now of why I'm not using the on-camera mics because it sounds terrible. But now he's asking, why am I not going just directly into the camera? So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to unplug from my audio recorder. Here's the Zoom right here. I'm unplugging. And I'm now going to plug into the camera directly. So now I'm going for my microphone, which is the same microphone. It's the Radio Shack clip-on mic that I've been using for years for this type of a show. And now it's going directly into the camera, and I can see the audio meters moving, so I know that it's working. And if you compare that to what you previously heard, I always in the past heard lots of hissing doing this type of a setup because the preamps in the camera, or any video camera, typically are super cheap. They always cut corners putting in the mic input preamps, and so it never sounds as good compared to something that's more dedicated. So if you compare this now to what I'm about to do, which is go back to the audio, you should be able to hear an obvious difference. Like I said in the past, when I've done this, the camera's audio was always sort of hissy, which you probably couldn't hear if you were listening to it through cheap speakers like laptop speakers. But if you use anything with any kind of fidelity, like external speakers or headphones, you will notice the difference. To answer your question about the settings on my Zoom that I use my external mic with, this is set at a 98 level. It's almost cranked up all the way because this mic that I'm wearing isn't super powerful, but it does have a battery in it, a button cell battery. So if you're using something else that maybe is weaker or doesn't have its own power, you might not be getting a good level that way, as you indicate, Donald. So I recommend you get a microphone that has its own battery, its own power source, and that should boost the level before it gets to the Zoom, and that way you won't have to peg your volume control in order to get it to hear anything. Maybe obviously you're not getting enough level, so you have to use something that's powered. As far as the other settings go, I'm just recording as a WAV file instead of MP3 because there's less compression. I'm using a 4816 setting, 48 kilohertz. That's kind of this video standard, and then the 16K bit rate. Our next email is from Michael Ting, who says, I'm a junior at my high school, and I've produced work, and the people around me have told me that I do great, but I'm not convinced. How do you know that your work is good or great, and how do you know where the next step in terms of learning to do even better? This is a really good question because I know typically all your close friends and family are always going to tell you your stuff is wonderful, but how do you get a real honest opinion? One way you can do that is become a member of, let's say, the Frugal Filmmaker Facebook group, which has a ton of people there that will give honest critiques of your work. Usually they're pretty nice and pretty polite and constructive. So if you post your video there and ask for a review or a critique, people will give it to you and often have great advice. Now, as far as what you need to do to become better, that's really tricky because you might not necessarily know where your weaknesses are right away. My advice is just to keep making videos and keep asking for people to tell you what they think, and you'll just evolve and find your voice over time. But it's going to take a lot of time. If you look at even great filmmakers, the classic filmmakers, it took them years to hit their peak. Even if you think they peaked early in their life, they were developing 10, 20 years before they hit their peak. In fact, I'm going to leave you a great video link down below, which is called if I recall, the guy who painted this was a loser, and it refers to Da Vinci's Last Supper, one of his great masterpieces. But it took him years and years and years of practice to get to that point. Even people born with talent need to develop it. And so that's really encouraging for people like me who are still, working and constantly doing stuff and want to improve, but it's going to take time to develop and hone your skills. So don't get discouraged, just keep at it, is the best advice I think anybody can give you. Graydon Cochran says, for a starter lighter kit, which is better, CFL or LED? Also, what is the best temperature for them? This is a great question. When you're starting out getting a lighting kit, what should you buy, LED versus CFL? And I'm just going to narrow the answer to this question to these two things, because there are other forms. You can still get tungsten lighting, of course, but they're not necessarily as inexpensive. So if I was going to pick between CFL or LED, I think the first thing you have to consider is cost. How much money do you want to spend? If you're going to go CFL, your light kits can be really inexpensive. You can get a 2 CFL light kit for $40. I'll leave you the link below. It has stands, it has the bulbs, it has umbrellas, and it can be very beneficial. It's more, spread out soft light. It's not necessarily a light kit you can control like you can with tungsten lighting. Tungsten lights still have an advantage over any of these other lights, is the ability to control it, because they have the ability to focus and then flag with the barn doors and other things that just make them easier to shape the light. But they send out a lot of heat. That's their major disadvantage. LED lights are also really good because they run cool, and you can power them off batteries really easy, something you can't do with CFLs as easily. And so you can use them in the field or in remote locations that might have access to power. So that's really nice. But cost-wise, CFLs are going to be your best deal. LEDs aren't super expensive. You can get really cheap ones for about $20, but the quality comes into question because, as I did a review on a $20 one a while ago, and it had some sort of a flickering issue. But if you spend about $10 more, you can get LED lights for about $30 a piece. But then you also have to get light stands, so that cost can go up rather quickly, where the CFLs, we can have an all-in-one for $40 to $60, depending on whether you want 2 or 3 lights. They're both really good options. They both put out light. You just have to know how to finagle them and how to work with them. And to answer the second part of your question, what is the best temperature for them? That's really up to you. I mean, the standards, are 3200 Kelvin for tungsten lighting, and then 5600 Kelvin for daylight. If you're going to be shooting in the daytime, you want to match daylight, you go with the 5600. And if you want to try to match tungsten or incandescent light bulbs, then you go with 3200. All right, finally we have a comment from previous Q&A, last week's Q&A, from Daniel Rutter, who says, when working on documentaries, what are, in your opinion, the best ways to approach interviews? How do you word questions in a way where you'll get the response you're looking for? And how do you light/shoot them and do things you'd recommend focusing on if one has to shoot these interviews in a quick run-and-gun style? There's kind of a lot in here, so I'm going to first take the first part of the question Daniel has about how do you word questions in a way to get the answers you want. Well, that's really kind of tricky. I would say, instead of trying to lead the person you're interviewing, just let them talk. The best way you can approach an interview, in my opinion, is, number one, kind of the general rule of interview questions is, obviously do your homework and tailor your questions toward the subject matter, but also don't ask yes or no questions. That's kind of a big rule, number one, because people will answer yes or no, and then your interview's over, or that question stops. Or if you ask them something that's not a yes or no question, they can't say yes or no, and they have to answer in a sentence or two. And then once they do that, it's up to you as the interviewer to elaborate on their answer. If you want more out of them, you have to elaborate, or get them to elaborate by asking more questions like, well, what do you mean? Well, can you be more specific, or something like that? I haven't done a lot of documentaries, so I don't have a lot of experience in that, but you can find stuff online about how to be a better interviewer. As far as if you're doing something that's run and gun, if you're just pulling people aside and you're trying to get a quick interview out of them, my advice as far as lighting and shooting is, just obey the rules of composition. You still want a good looking product, and my advice is, if you're going to just do something really fast and grab people off the street, or do something that maybe you don't have a 3-point lighting setup ready for them, is just to make sure that your shot is composed decently. And the biggest thing I can think of as far as helping you there is, don't have a flat background. Don't park them in front of a wall that's flat and then shoot them straight on. Have some kind of dimension behind them. As you can see, the background here on me sort of has kind of a forced perspective, kind of converging lines sort of thing. Just, obey the rule of thirds, that kind of thing. Just take those simple rules and apply them no matter what kind of shot you're setting up. And if you have to do it quickly, just have that stuff be kind of organic so you know what makes a good shot. So it's visually interesting. Lighting, even though you might not have lights set up, let's say you're doing this in the daytime, bring a bounce card with you. Those are really cheap. Piece of foam core so you can get some kind of fill on their face if the shadows are too harsh, that kind of a thing. Just think ahead and be ready. That's all the questions we have for this week. Again, thank you so much for sending me your emails and giving me your comments and all your support. I never have a problem coming up with questions for the show because everybody is constantly asking me stuff, and I really appreciate that. Hopefully my answers are giving you the information you need. So again, if you'd like the question read on the show, please send it to thefrugalfilmmaker@gmail.com or leave a comment below. All links mentioned in this episode should be below in the description to give you more places to go to figure out this stuff that you asked about. And I'll have another video for you this week, Thursday or Friday, and another Q&A on Monday. So thanks for watching. We'll see you.